Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. We had a little bit of a hiatus here, but back in the studio with me, as always, is the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Eric J. Morin.
The hiatus. We sometimes take podcast hiatuses. That I guess, that happens sometimes.
We have some things that come up over the weeks that we're moving. We're always moving, scaling, trying to meet with clients, and sometimes it's hard to get back in the studio, but when we are in the studio, I enjoy it. I enjoy being in the studio with you, sir.
Sir, you've been in town a lot lately. We've got to get you doing the podcast while you're in town. So usually in town for events and those types of things. So and then looking at our new event center that we've got coming, which is an exciting thing. So we've acquired an event space, so we're going to have an amazing facility to host all kinds of things, and instead of utilizing hotels in the Atlanta area, which can, they're beautiful, but what we're creating is way better. So it's going to be exciting.
If you guys, if you watch on, I'll give you guys a little teaser. If you guys are watching on YouTube, I'll figure out a way for you guys over the next, several podcasts for you to start seeing a little bit of a sneak preview. Maybe I'll give you a little link. Maybe I'll give you a little video action for you guys to see a sneak preview, but only if you're watching on YouTube. I was talking to, we just had an event with a lot of our clients coming to town, and we do this business acumen program where we're teaching them new business concepts in order to grow their business. And I had a few of them come up to me just talking about the podcast. I was like, hey, you guys watch it on YouTube? And they're like, oh, yeah, I've been meaning to do that. And I think I got us a few more subscribers over the week. So it's always good being back in the studio.
What did it say? Always be closing? What are you closing? You closing, huh?
Always be closing
some subscribers.
Always, man. I'm on it. I'm on it. Trying to help get some subscribers.
I like
so, and we were talking about, in Q1, we talked a lot about, revenue cycle management, and that ultimately led to the need that we saw in the marketplace for proper sales training. So I want you to just kind of touch on the importance of sales. What does sales actually mean? Because that's kind of like I would say a negative term in the dental world. When they hear sales, they're like, oh, we're not a sales organization. So touch on that a little bit. And that's, what I feel like would be best for us to talk about today.
Well, I think that there's a movement towards full arch, which is only pushing the need for sales more. And in fact, the fact that people are trying to move to full arch, and there's so many doctors. As a matter of fact, we had a room full of kind of my private group, and I think most of them in there were full arch doctors. So there's becoming more and more competition in that space, a tremendous amount of competition. And when it was just one or two people, in an area, now it's everyone in an area, which is good for patients because there's a lot more solutions than dentures and those types of things, and even for young people who maybe have experienced some tooth loss, but it's a transformative procedure, but it's brought up this idea or this desire and need for closing more than people have ever really come to in dental. And I've been saying for years that one of the very first places is on the phones, and we lose so many people on the phones we don't think we do. And all the reasons why that is the conversion. First of all, it's for some reason, and I kind of maybe understand why. Back going at the beginning of dental offices, let's just say you had a small little clinic. It was one doc, and the doctor would hire an office manager. That office manager would handle most of the duties of the office, and then they would find someone very inexperienced, and everything was out of network, and it just kind of was a different marketplace. And so you'd hire someone to just pick up the phone. In a sense, the person who picked up the phone was an order taker. Right? The person had already called up, hey, I've heard great things about Dr. Smith. I'm new in the area. I want to go ahead and schedule an appointment. So it was an order taker. It was a true receptionist, right? Let's call it a receptionist. And then what happened was, and then the doctor was they would work there for 20, 30 years. They would put their money in a 401k or in some type of retirement vehicle, hopefully live low enough below their means that they would accumulate some capital and some money in retirement accounts. And then they'd sell off the practice to some young associate, and they'd ride off into the sunset, right? That was kind of how it worked. That's not how the market is today, and it's so far from that. But yet we've never walked away from the old ways of doing things, which is you shouldn't have a receptionist pick up the phone because you're not an order taker anymore. Now you're a conversion specialist, if you want to think about it. Your patients have more options than they ever have had before. There's more competition and more forces, pushing up against your dental office. And so now you have to be able to handle that, especially if you're multi-location, because if you're multi-location, your margins are smaller. And so we need to pay for fixed overhead quicker. And because of that, we need to, reduce cancellation rates. We need to convert, patients into the chair. These types of things need to happen. So now we're in a situation where the people have to get to a place on the fence where there has to be immersion training, where there has to be so much immersion. And what ends up happening, I listened to, and I'll give you 2 examples here in a second. I listened to this young lady, and she was saying, well, I just don't follow the script. I kind of do it my own way. And you and I both know, Matthew, don't do it your own way, right? Because when we do an ad, they'll do A, B, C, D, E, F, G test to see what ad clicks. Believe it or not, one freaking stupid stinking word can change the difference between the click rate. There's literally every piece of language matters. And so when your person says, well, I take the script, but I kind of do it my own way, that's horrible. That's horrible. Trust me on this. I know what they're thinking, and they're trying to be like, I don't want to follow a script. I do it my own way. Well, here's the problem with that. There's tested language that actually works and converts, and there's language that is ultimately their own. Now, the reason why they don't use the language is because they haven't been able to really master it. That's the truth. And so they get into, when a phone call comes, they go frontal lobe, and they go fight or flight, and their pulse rate changes, and they get kind of antsy, and someone's like, I'm going to cancel 4 appointments, and they're like, and they just want to get off the phone, right? And you get frustrated because you're like, well, they should know better. Well, no, they haven't gotten to unconscious competency where they can do it without thinking, and they're not really trained for that. But I'll give you another example, and then I'll shut up for a second, Matthew. So I had another example. So I had a doctor who had a lot of leads come in, but yet the person who was calling the leads was also the office manager. And these leads are high value leads. And so the person was saying she was calling each person 4 times, which I just know that's not true. Calling 163 people 4 times and then texting them 4 times, that can't be true either. So it's not their fault. It's just that there's oftentimes, and she's an amazing person, by the way. I just am saying that when we get into this system of conversion, we have to up our sophistication. Now, I haven't talked about doctor conversion yet, which I think we need to do. But I'm just talking about the first line of conversion, which is the phone. And now I'm spending time, which, by the way, seems antiquated. So antiquated is not the right word, elementary. So if I say this, most people come off and say, well, that's elementary. We already mastered that. No, you haven't. I don't know that I've ever come across an office that's mastered it. In fact, our out-of-network conversion when I owned a dental practice was over 96%. So I know I mastered it. There's an organization, it's one of the Inc., I think 500 or something right now or something. They're a dental organization, and they're on Forbes list, and they have a 97.2% conversion rate. The average dental office is 35%. And people think, well, no, we're not. Yes, you are. The average dental office converts at 35%. So while it seems elementary by nature, and we all go, yeah, I'll guarantee you right now, your conversion's probably around 35%, 40%. And on top of that, they do count the time from 7 to 7. So if no one's picking up at 5:30, at 6:30, you're missing appointments.
Yeah, I think conversion specialist is probably the appropriate term for that. And it's, the dental marketplace has changed so much over the last probably decade as far as, okay, so in the beginning, conversion wasn't really a thing. Like you said, most people didn't market, therefore they weren't tracking. They didn't know if they were converting on the patient. They're like, oh, the doctor came in. Oh, there was patients in the chair. They're good to go. And then over the last decade or so, marketing's become more of a forefront thing where it's like, all right, we need to market. And now people are being very reactive in that, and they're starting to market, but they don't have the systems in place to be able to convert the patients when they come in. So now they're saying marketing isn't working. And even with the conversion, if you are tracking conversion, like you said, it's a 35%. When I talk to Lisa in our consulting department, Diana, and all of the ladies and gentlemen that are on that team, very rarely, like you said, do we see anyone that's over 35% when it comes to conversion. And it's hilarious just because the doctor coming into it's like, yeah, our conversion's like 90%. It's like, is it really? And there's a lot of different conversions on the phone. It's the doctors converting patients as the hygienist converting them to do other procedures. Like, there's a lot of things that go into it, but now there's all types of tools that can track and do all of this. And there's so many data points on this because they found that conversion in sales in a dental practice is key to long-term success of the organization. And that's how you scale. That's how you get better. You focus in on acquisition. Acquisition in the dental community has always been reactive. And the last decade, it's become more of a very, very forefront issue with dental practices. And the best of the best are the ones that are trying to figure out, how do we convert them quicker? How do we get them in the chair? How do we scale up capacity so that we can support the patients that are coming in, and they know how to track it. I mean, there's so many softwares out there right now. I think that's when something's an issue, there's tends to be competition that comes into the marketplace. And I've seen probably 30 demos over this tracking software for these new that hooks up to Dentrix and Weave and all of these, and EagleSoft and all these platforms just to track if conversion is there or not. And doctors sometimes get overwhelmed with it, but it is, the term sales is, how do we serve them? And I think with all the recent studies on oral health and the importance of getting your cleanings, 2 to 3 times a year, like, you have to switch from the mindset of, you're not selling people to come into your practice. You're ultimately trying to serve them because you believe that you can serve them better than anyone else. And when you start switching to that mindset and that philosophy, sales becomes a little bit more fun. And the second part of that is when you said a script. So scripts, number one, they aren't easy because people don't role play them. We hired Ken. So when Ken came onto the team and he handles up, we call him our chief change agent. So he's basically responsible for changing practices, getting them in the door, being the gatekeeper, and picking out the ones that we know, like, and trust, that are hungry, humble, smart, that are going to grow, scale, and they have the tools necessary for us to be successful working with them. And the first basically 90 days of working with us, it was all language. It was all just talking about, all right, so how can we provide value on the phone? How can we provide value? How can we provide value? And the only way he's been successful is because we did that on the front end. So we really honed in on language. And I think when you bring someone into the dental practice, there's a lack of that. There might be a script, but the script hasn't been updated in 14 years. It was the old office manager that put the script in place, and then Susie up front will read the script probably 5-10 times, maybe follow it for a week, and then it falls off. But there's two parts of that too, where you got to have the data behind it too. So if you have one person that's not using the script and the other person that's using the script, it's good to track those two. Is this one converting more than this one? If the one that's not using the script is converting, she has a script in her head. She uses it every single time. You need to figure out what that script is and start streamlining that and putting that across the board. So that was kind of a long-winded thing there, but I think sales on the front end is key. And then I know you have a lot to say when it comes to the doctor closing big cases. So I'll let you touch on that and what the importance of that looks like and what that process should be.
Well, I think that I've trained extensively on sales language and doctor conversion. And I think one of the biggest things I would just say, and this is the biggest tip I can give you, is, I can give you 100 pieces of language, but one of the greatest pieces of language is just tell them what to do. Tell them what to do. Years ago, I was sitting in front of a cardiologist, and it was probably, I think it was 2013, and I was doing a session with him. I was growing his practice. He would ask me to help him with his practice, and And I gave him some options on things. He goes, Eric, I'm a cardiologist. Do you want me to tell you what to do, or do you want me to give you options? I was like, tell me what to do. He's like, okay. So the thing is that, and one of my greatest mentors, Don Barden, said the same thing to me years ago. He said, just tell them what to do. Tell them what to do. People want to be told what to do. I share an example, and I used to have this picture, Matthew. You remember this picture that when Atlanta started doing these automated bin things at the airport, right? Instead of having to slide your bin in some antiquated way, they had the automated bins to speed up the process. Well, when they first created this, at the end of when you get your stuff out of the bin, what would happen is, at first, no one knew what the hell to do, because before we were stacking our bins, but people were like, okay, does the machine handle it now? Does TSA grab it? Like, no one knew what to do with this new process. And I came back a few months later, and then TSA had put this gigantic sticker up, and it just said this: stack your bin. Stack your bin. And I would watch people walk up, and they would look up at the sticker, and they would go, oh, stack my bin. So people want to be told what to do. The problem with doctors is they often overeducate. Okay, they overeducate. I'm going to say that again, overeducate. Somebody just wants the benefit anyhow. They just want the benefit, whatever that benefit is. Not even the feature. You're selling features, and they want the benefit, right? They want a better looking smile, and they really don't even want a better looking smile. They really want what better looking smile will give them, right? Whether it's confidence, a kiss, whatever. And so they spend so much time over-educating about something that someone does not need to be over-educated about. The person's thoroughly confused. They give them multiple options, and then they let them walk out with a handful of options, not knowing what to do. And I watch this over and over again. Well, you could do this, or this, or this. Let us know what you want to do. That's the craziest thing ever. You just tell somebody what to do. And then you even go a step further. You just go, look, we're going to go ahead and get this scheduled. We're going to get you in next week. Susie up front's going to go ahead and get you on the calendar. Like, you just tell people what to do. Now, I can get into extensive sales language. Okay, I can spend the next 4 days in sales language. But I can't tell you how much that one is just missed. There's a full arch guy that I work with that does over $400,000 a month in full arch. And before he was even doing that, I watched him in his office one day just tell somebody what to do. He's great at telling people what to do. And when you just tell people what to do, instead of just giving them options and say, well, we could do this, or you just tell them, this is what we're going to do. You're going to do this. You're going to sign up for this. You're going to get this procedure done. You're going to be happier. And then the patient goes, okay. And so the problem is, so I learned many years ago, when you overeducate, ultimately speaking, people don't move forward. You got to be careful not to overeducate people, because they just get confused. So stop overeducating. No one needs to know the material that you use inside of the composite. Like, no one gives a darn. Nobody cares about all these, this procedure was, done first time in Italy, and like, nobody cares. Like, just no. We're going to do this. It's going to relieve this symptom, or it's going to create this result. That's a feature still. Here's the benefit of that. You're going to, be happier. You're going to be able to eat better, whatever it is, and then move them forward. We're going to go ahead and get you moving forward today. Tell them what to do. Yeah. I can't express that enough.
I mean, the perfect example of that is I went about probably a year and a half ago. I go to the dentist often, but a year and a half ago specifically, I went to this one dental practice, and I need to replace a filling at the time. And I was presented with 3 different types of fillings, 3 different images, all of these things. It was like, okay, which of these would you like? And I was like, I don't
know.
And I didn't move forward with the treatment because I had no clue. I was like, all right, so now I need to go back and do research to figure out
research on what you should be doing. Yeah, that's right.
Get reviews and all this stuff. It's just basically open. I'm kind of a fact finder, but not really. My Colby would say I'm not. But when you present the options, then I'm like, okay, I need to look at these options to see which one's the best one. Instead of her just saying, this is the best one, it's going to be expensive, but this is the one that's going to last longest and going to make your smile look great.
I'm going to go ask the non-dental people. I mean, this is what happens, right? So you give me the options, and then I'm going to go and ask a bunch of non-dentists what I should do. And I'm even going to ask your front desk person, hey, should I do this or this? I'm asking the administrative person what procedure I should do because you didn't have the courage. Now, if someone says, ultimately speaking, I just don't want to sell, well, then they don't really get it because you can't serve people unless you sell. You can't get, unless you get people to move forward. Oftentimes we'll see close rates in dental practices at 34, 40%. Now, if you tell me your close rate's 100%, Okay, first of all, you don't want 100% of people to move forward, even if that was the case. Second of all, it's not the case. It's just you're not counting the people who ultimately said they have to go talk to their spouse, or they needed to, whatever excuse they gave you that day. If they don't sign up for the next appointment to get done right there, you missed the case. That it's just that simple. Like you missed it. You should have got it scheduled that day, and if you didn't, it's gone. And you missed the boat, and that's okay. But you got to count that and figure out how to get conversion. A good thing about conversion, just move it up 10%. The thing is, people want to go from 34% conversion to 100% conversion. Instead of going, let's go from 34% conversion this week, let's get 44% conversion. And if they don't move forward to that next appointment, you didn't convert them. It's just the case. Now, remember, this is how you serve people. Like if someone comes to Tower Leadership and we don't get them to move forward, I can't help them. And in fact, if I want to get idealistic with it, I've really let them down, because in the future, when they're struggling, when they haven't created the practice they want, when they're not impacting their community and they're not impacting people around them, and they didn't live up to their potential, that'll happen because I didn't have the courage to get someone to move forward. And so I know, and it hurts me, if someone doesn't move forward with Tower Leadership in a conversation, I know in some ways I let that person down, because I know their future will not be better. I know for a fact when they leave, I'm like, their future, they missed millions and millions and millions, if not tens of millions of dollars, and impacted their family and community and team. And we missed all that because I didn't have a critical conversation, or I wasn't able to get them to move forward. I know it's not me who gets hurt, it's them who gets hurt. And in the long run, it's everyone that's around that person. So it's heartbreaking to see a patient walk out the door that you could have gotten, could have really done some great things for, and then them not moving forward. And I hope you feel the same way, because I think you should feel that way.
Yeah. And you mentioned, you don't want 100% close rate. Can you explain to the audience what that means? Because a lot of them are probably scratching their head like, what do you mean you don't want 100% close rate?
Well, look, some people are patients that are difficult. Okay, they're not going to be a long-term patient of the practice. They're going to fight you. Some people aren't going to pay their bill. Honestly, they will make up excuses to not pay their bill. Some people are non-compliant. Depending on what the procedure is, you might need someone who's compliant. There's people that walk in your practice, you're like, I don't want this person as a patient, or maybe even from a clinical sense, they're non-compliant, or maybe somebody who, like you said, is going to give you all the reasons they can't pay their bill. The idea of closing 100% is absurd. Matthew, you and I know this too. We meet doctors all the time. Doctors don't know this, but we, because we've been doing this for a long time, just like you have with patients, we can walk up to within 5 minutes at any event and go, yeah, we don't want to work with this person. Yeah. And they think, in their own minds, they're like, well, yeah, I didn't buy anything. I'm like, no, we didn't want you to move forward. Because we know we want to work with people that are humble, hungry, and smart, great people trying to change lives and doing awesome, amazing things. And if that's not you, I'm probably going to avoid the conversation. You're going to tell me how great you are and how you're, whatever. And so I don't want 100% close, right? There's plenty of people we already know are going to be full of excuses and never do the work. So that's a waste of our time. And, it's not really, it doesn't make sense for anybody. So we'll intentionally, there's a lot of people we intentionally do not want to work with at Tower, and I don't mean that disrespectfully. It's just that I know the type of clients that we want to work with are great people, affecting change in people's lives, and you know.
So what would you say, and we're going on, I think, 20 something minutes here. So if there was say two things if someone was looking to get better at sales, in their dental practice, what are the two things they could start doing tomorrow in order to become better at sales?
Well, here I'll give you 2 tips. How about that? Because there's so many things you can get better at sales. How about 2 tips? 1 piece of language and 1 tip. How about that? All right. Here's a piece of language. Piece of language that I love to use, that I think you should incorporate, is just the saying, you would have to admit. You would have to admit. You would have to admit, if you're in this much pain, we need to do something to get you out of pain. You would have to admit, if you're unhappy with your smile, then we need to make some progress in getting that fixed. You would have to admit if functionally you can't eat, we need to find a solution so that you can eat. You'd have to admit that a person should be able to eat without worrying about dentures falling out. You'd have to admit. So it's just a great. It's what we call concession in sales. And so you're not trying to get someone to go all in. You're basically getting a concession. You're getting someone to admit that they're giving you a little. They're not giving you the whole thing, but they're giving you a little bit, right? So you're not in the story. Goes back to basically war where troops were trying to get other troops converted, and they were basically using concessions. And it's a tactic that has been used in psychology for so many years. It's not. Remember, keep this in mind. You're trying to get someone to move forward so you can help them. Okay, so you're trying to utilize technique to get someone to move forward. So it's not trying to manipulate someone to hurt them. You're trying to help them. Certainly, if you use sales enough and you are not a good person, certainly you could manipulate people for bad. Don't do that. But if you get good at it, that's just one piece of sales language. Just you would have to admit, and just get that triggered in. Like you'd have to admit. Now, I could give you a lot more pieces, but there's one. All right, that's one piece. Second thing is invest in sales training. Invest in sales. Like you get. If I need to get my marriage on track, then that means I probably need to invest in marriage counseling. It means I need to invest in date nights. It means I need to invest whatever. If I'm going to invest in my health, I'm probably gonna have to hire a nutritionist or a personal trainer or whatever you want. You got to invest in. So you have to invest in sales training if you want a better result. You can't just say, well, I'll keep doing it, I'll do it myself. Well, if you haven't done it at this point, you probably won't, and your organization isn't built around it. So you have to say, okay, I need sales training, and I need a lot of it because I want to get great at this, because I want to serve patients. So there's an investment needed to make around your phones. I promise you, and it's not AI driven. AI is not the solution because AI can't get them to unconscious competency. So it's just a sales tactic, okay? Now, it can aid you in collecting data points, that it does do, but it doesn't help you convert. So I would say you've got to invest both in doctor and team member training around conversion and count it, measure it, know what those numbers are. And if you don't know what those numbers are, then how do you change it? How do you affect, right? They say you can't manage what you don't measure. You have to measure to manage. So you have to know what those numbers are. What is your call conversion? What is your doctor conversion? What about the procedural mix? What procedural mix has what conversion rate? There's areas that if you focus on and start working on, you'll get better at. That's what they say. If you sit on the scale every day, you'll lose weight. Well, that's because if you get on the scale every single day, you'll start to look at the number, right? It affects what you eat every day because you're measuring. If you look at your bank account every morning, it'll affect how much you spend. These are just things that are true. And so I would say you have to measure the numbers and know what those numbers are, and then manage around them. And then if you don't know how to do it or have the teams, then you need to outsource the training so that you can get great at this. But become great at it. Your patients and team and community and family are counting on you to become great at this. Don't not do it. This is to quit watching what everybody else is doing too. Most people convert at 34%. Most people can't. You're asking your neighbor who's failing. It's like sitting next to somebody on an exam where they're failing and copying them. Don't do that, right? You want to become great. So those are just some thoughts.
No, I think it's important. I think it's training repeatedly too. You always use a statement, repetition and immersion too. So if you think that you can go to one sales training and you're going to be the friggin' legend behind sales after that point, that's not how it works. I've read many of books, I've been to seminars, I've watched plenty of YouTube and podcast videos and all this, and I'm still not as where I would love to be when it comes to sales. I feel like I'm pretty good, but I could always get better. So I think, if you guys think that you're going to do like one phone training or one sales training, and then your team's going to be sufficient in that area, you're wrong. Things change in the marketplace, different language goes different ways, different times of the year, different types of things happen. So always be training, always be, every single year you should probably do 1 or 2 trainings just on sales. Even if your team member said, yeah, I went to that last year, they need to do it this year. One of the things that we are going to be doing here in the next quarter or Q4, one of those two, we're going to be doing a sales training. We're going to be doing a sales mastery program for dental team members and just doctor team members who work with some other ones too. Just focus in on that. We just had an event and we asked the room, we're like, hey, would this be something you were interested in? And literally 90% of the room was like, yep, I would be very interested in that. And, we always work with, the best of the best when it comes to the doctors. So they're always trying to improve and do these things. So I would say, keep listening in, guys. I think in the next couple of weeks, we're going to keep doing these podcasts. We're going to keep having guests on. And we're going to announce, what that looks like, give you guys some details on what that sales mastery program. So if you're listening to this and you're like, yes, this is definitely something I want to do, make sure you make sure you subscribe, make sure you follow us on social media, because you're going to start to see some things pop up for that. There'll be some early bird discounts. There'll be different things for this upcoming event. So I love it. Me and you could talk about sales all day. I think marketing, sales, that's, what our background is in. And I think it's something we're passionate about, because we know ultimately you can't serve people if you don't sell them something. So thanks for joining us, Mr. Morin. Back in the studio.
Back in the studio, brother. Good to see you, as always.
Make sure you guys like, subscribe, follow us on all our social media forums, and then we will see you next time. Thank you.